to our third Texas, the Yellow Rose of Texas Republican Women Education Committee chat. We are here tonight to focus on a topic, protecting personal freedom, a vaccine awareness event. And so we have an agenda. Hopefully, if you picked up an orange piece of paper outside, you'll have tonight's agenda so you can kind of see what we're going to try to accomplish. We also have the little half-size white papers, little menus. The restaurant does have full menus if you are interested, but we were trying to help them and just with a select few dishes. But they do have some specials outside, catfish, fried catfish, and fried chicken steak, and great desserts. So if you haven't ever been to the Market Street Cafe, you want to try out some different things. Well, thank you again for attending. We're very excited to have each of you here. My name is Mary Ann Jackson, and I'm the recording secretary on the board of the Yellow Rose and also the education chair. And in the spring of 2021, we started an education committee with a couple main goals. And one of the goals was to really help with focus on education issues, because that was hot in the news. We had a lot of parents upset with what was going on during the COVID time and all the different things they were finding out. And then we also knew that to make a change, we had to get some new school board members, some new elected officials. So tonight we're going to feature a couple of people who have stepped up to that challenge. But first we're going to say a prayer and then get started with our meeting. So Stacy Cook is going to lead us in the prayer.
Father God, I just thank you for tonight. I thank you for every person who made it here tonight, and that you see, and that you know, and that you care about. Father God, I praise you and thank you for education, knowledge, protection. Lord, I pray for the healing of all the people in this room. Lord, I thank you that your people are hungry and that you're going to deliver. And Lord, I pray every word that is spoken tonight is taken to heart, and that we feel empowered to go on our next step in our path. In Jesus' name, amen.
So tonight I'd also just like to make a big thank you to Mary Ellen back there. Thank you, Mary Ellen, for letting us use the cafe again. And thank you for your team of hard workers that helped us get set up. I'd like to thank our sound system by David Flower and Justin. They do a professional job, and they're volunteers, and we really appreciate having this sound system. I'd like to thank the education leadership team and education committee with the Yellow Rose that help us and keep me going and finding out more and more information. Our president of the Yellow Rose, Kate Tyner, let me know today she wasn't feeling well, so she is staying at home tonight. But Kate Tyner is our president of the Yellow Rose and does a lot to support me and our group, and we appreciate that. Monica and her mom, Helen, we're in charge of sign-in. If you didn't sign in, please sign in so we get your email, and make sure you print it and write it so we can keep it and let you know of other events going on. And I'd also just like to thank all the speakers that are participating tonight that we'll introduce in just a minute. So we want to recognize our guests, and we have invited some people that stood up to the challenge. People just like you and me that are out there in our schools and saw what was going on, and they're going to come give their little 2-minute elevator speech to let us know who they are so that you can remember to come and go vote for them on November 2nd and help them with their campaigns. I just like to say also, I live in Cy-Fair School District. There's an election for Cy-Fair candidates, but also there's Klein that's in our area that's having some election, and Houston ISD, and I worked in Houston ISD. And it doesn't matter to me what district people are in. We want some of this garbage out. We want good people in office. And so I'm over in Klein. I'm pushing cards and doing stuff to try to get their name out, the same in Cy-Fair. So, and even in Houston, I'm trying to let my friends know that are in Houston ISD, who are the people to vote for. So without further ado, I'd like y'all to meet some of my new good friends that are running for school board. Who would like to go first? Okay, Matt.
Hi, my name is Matthew Skaggs. I'm running for position 2 on the Klein School Board against Doug James. The main reason why I'm running is I have triplets, and I'm sick of seeing what the board is doing now. There's CRT in the school. They took a grant for, I don't remember the dollar amount, but they're changing it to other wording, and they're showing it in our kids' face. It's just time for transparency. It's time to change. It's time to get all the older people out and the new people in. We want the parents to be involved. We want y'all to have a say in what goes on in our kids' lives and not have all the decisions made behind a shut door. Everything that Klein does is all behind a shut door. They let y'all speak for 2 minutes, but they don't respond back to what they're doing. They don't let y'all speak at all. Y'all have no input at all on what's going on in our kids' life for their future. And if we want our kids to be leaders, then we have to be leaders ourselves and change. Because what's out there now isn't changing. It's only getting worse and worse. And that's all I have to say for now.
Hey guys, well, Marianne's right. We're hot, and it's a hot race because parents are hot. We're seeing pronouns with nothing to do with how to use it in a sentence. We're seeing CRT. We're seeing our leadership in education being told to read books like White Fragility. And in fact, at this particular training, it was over 2 hours long, and the only books that they recommended were on race. And these are just some of the issues, and so tonight I don't have a lot of time to speak on all of the issues that I have, but you can contact me if you get one of my push cards. Please take a sign, there's some here, and we've got to go pretty quickly. But tonight I'm going to tell you a story about my son. My son was kidnapped when he was by his mother when he was in the middle of 4th grade, and we didn't get him back until he was in 7th grade. He was very far behind in school, and he really struggled to catch up. Because of that issue, we utilized all the services that we could. We didn't have money at the time. We used tutoring. We did, all the teachers were telling us how much they were going to help us. And he did not pass STAR, and in his senior year, we were preparing for him to take another year of school because he was either failing or barely passing his classes. But what happened was the board went, again, behind closed doors and voted for him to graduate. He walked across the stage totally unprepared for life when he was 17 years old. There was no reason for them to do that. They had all the resources, yet because he was so poorly performing, what happens is the schools get ratings. And when you have a negative student that is performing at such a low academic level, then they don't want that to reflect on their schools because it'll affect their rating. So the reason that this is significant right now is because we've seen this same educational loss across the board for every student who was in school in 2020 because Zoom did not teach our children. And from what I'm hearing with the State Board of Education, they're at least 18 months behind in education, and instead of focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and all of these books on race, we should be focusing on catching our kids back up in education, and the school board is not doing that right now. And if we allow the school board to remain in place, this same thing's gonna happen to all of our kids, and this is exactly what we want to see because my 23-year-old son right now still is struggling to find his way in life. He's not prepared for even a trade school because he's got to be able to read and write and be proficient in math to be able to pass some of those courses. And this is exactly the position that all of our kids are in right now if we allow this to continue. And that's the goal, right? Isn't it? You're talking about a socialist agenda to where our kids are going to graduate fully unprepared and fully dependent upon the state. And we're not going to let that happen. And so we can't do it alone. We need your help. We need all of you because we don't just get good leaders because we deserve them. You get leaders that you work towards getting, and then we need all of your help for all 3 of us here that are running. And again, I'm Kristen Cobb. I'm running for position 5. I'd like to ask for your vote and for your volunteerism and support in this campaign to help all 3 of us make it through and change the entire ideology of this board because we're tired of seeing these things that are just absolute anti-Christian, anti-family value, and we're done with it. And I hope you are too. And if you are, come and support us.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Pilkington. I am running for position 3 in Klein ISD. So I'm a mom of 4. I have a son who graduated from Klein High School back in 2020 when they didn't have a graduation or a prom or a senior year really. So the parents pulled together and we had his own graduation, which no board member showed up for, but that's another story. I have another senior now at Klein Oak. I have a sophomore, and of course I have a little caboose. We call him a bonus baby. He's a kindergartner at Metzler. So I'm an investor, realtor, and business owner. I took a small local real estate education company called Lifestyles Unlimited from one office nationwide. I decided to run because I want to protect parental rights. I've been big with TFEC. I helped run with them a while ago. I wanted to ensure that my kids, step back. I don't follow rules very well. I wanted to make sure that my kids could breathe fresh air and see the warmth in people's smiles and their classmates. I'm worried about mental health. If you go on my Facebook page, you'll see my story on my son where I spoke to the board last year. However, what I found is concerning, since I've been running, CRT is in Klein ISD despite what they want you to believe. They are gaslighting you. Here's their cultural responsiveness training. They deleted the YouTube video when it was brought to their attention. We do have screenshots of them reading their equity diversion or equity resolution. But this is the cultural responsive training. If you guys want a copy, want to share with your neighbors, let me know, reach out to any of us. We have it. And they have suggested reading in there, white fragility. Why do the black kids sit alone at a lunch table in the cafeteria? Have courageous conversations about race. So those are their suggested books. And I have those books here, and I wish I could stay so you could see what's in there because, by the way, if you're white, you're a racist. There's nothing you can do about it. No wonder why my sophomore daughter has anxiety, because she cares about people. Because we care about people, and we don't care about your race, but she's told that she's a racist. And there's nothing you can do. So, June 2020, Dr. McGowan addressed 300 plus district leaders at an administrative collaborative virtual retreat where she spoke about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Elijah McClain, and countless others. However, there was no discussion about the loss of a year of education for our kids. We need to stop the background noise, the division, the divisiveness, and we need to get back to basics. We need to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are 33rd in math out of the nations. 33rd. China is #1 in education in the world. I want more transparency with the board. Community parent board for finance, budget, and also curriculum and education. So I just want to say, a vote for Natalie P. We need your donations. We need you to volunteer. We need you to share. I don't care what ISD you're in. If you're in Tomball, if you're in Cy-Fair, if you're in Houston, we need you to share that we are the candidates. You've got the Cy-Fair candidates in front of you because this isn't going to happen by ourselves. We need everybody on board sharing and talking because it is important. Follow us on Facebook. We are running as a slate, so we're not going to put anyone out, but we are your team, dream team for Klein. So vote for us, and thank you, Mary Ann, for putting this together.
Hi, everyone. My name is Clark Benson. I'm an advocate for the Cy-Fair position 5, 6, and 7. Some of you have flyers out there on your table. We have these candidates couldn't be here today, unfortunately. Scott Henry has a daughter in the hospital, so you can send out some prayers for Scott Henry's daughter in the hospital. And Natalie and Lucas, unfortunately, had other events, but wanted to come out here and at least let you guys know to look at this. I think, as with some of the prior people have mentioned, there's a lot of ideology seeping into our systems, and these candidates are all the GOP, Harris County GOP endorsed candidates. And so please think about them with CFISD. And then just on a personal note, one other thing I wanted to share. I don't know what it looks like in Klein, but I can tell you in Cy-Fair, somewhere between 5% and 15% of the voting population get out to vote. If you know people, I know you hear this over and over and over again, guys, but if you know people that are Republicans and they're not voting, urge them to get out and vote, because really the only way we can change the dynamics of what's going on with the incumbency in these school boards, both for Klein and Cy-Fair, I'm sure they're very similar. So I just encourage you to get the vote out. It's just a tragic that only 15% of the people get out to vote, and if we could increase that to 40 or 50%, incumbency would be a thing of the past. So.
And if you're wondering how you can help, these are all grassroots people that are, full-time workers and parents. So if you have a chance to check off their websites and can make a donation, you don't have to donate tons of money, but if you have $20, $30, $40 to help them, if you don't want to donate money, but you want to give some of your time, you can also volunteer to make phone calls. You can volunteer to do block walking. You can volunteer to, and that's just take the initiative going around your own neighborhood as you're walking your dog and recruiting and talking them up. One idea I came up with in Cy-Fair, we have a bunch of bus stops. So I thought, I could just take my little poster, walk around at 8:15 and catch a bunch of them on all the corners there. But if you also want to do a meet and greet at your home, I know the Klein candidates really need extra kind of support because their incumbents are so ingrained into the district. I think a lot of the parents just are kind of been blinded and they're not, I don't know what's going on, but we do need people to host meet and greets and invite your church friends, neighbors, colleagues to come and meet some of these candidates and help them. So tonight, I'm really excited to introduce to you Stacy Cook. She is the founder of Mighty Oaks Therapies. She's a certified homeopath and a licensed occupational therapist with 20 years of experience. And she's going to speak to us tonight about some alternative health options. And one of the things I'd like to let you know about Stacy was this year, it was in the spring, and I was invited to come hear a presentation she was doing, and it was just kind of, for me, just this whole new world opened up of homeopathy. There I go. See, I'm still learning it, and I even signed up for a class and bought 2 books, and I am just learning this whole new area of how to take care of myself and my family. It's very interesting. Many of you may know a lot more than I do, but I am just really into learning more of what I can do for myself. And she's a great teacher. She's a great therapist. So without further ado, thank you, Stacy.
Sure. I am very happy to be here. When I found out that Mary Ann was going to invite Texans for Vaccine Choice to come, I was like, can I please present that night? I would love to talk as well. I'm a big fan of that group. I have given to them before. They represent things that are very important to me. I think in this day and age, in this time, I mean, what is very important to us is that we have some autonomy with our health, and that we have a choice with things. If I need to get closer or further, let me know. But my name is Stacy Cook. Sorry, say again. I'm good. My name is Stacy Cook, and I am the founder of Mighty Oaks Therapies. My background is I'm an occupational therapist. I work with kids with autism, sensory processing disorder, attention deficit disorder. That's my background. But in the latter years, a lot of these years were spent in great conversations with some great mamas. I love working with kids. I love my job. I like being tough on them and pushing them. But my favorite part really is the relationships that I built with mama bears. I mean, they're amazing. So it's been some of those conversations that I've had with moms and dads that have gotten me to where I'm at today. And I thought, instead of me being here and listing facts for you tonight about this is what you could do about, I just thought, when I look out here, I think everybody here has a story that brought them here, not just a meeting that you come to. There's a reason why you would want to come and hear these topics. There were reasons why I had deep dives and researched into vaccines and immunizations and alternative healthcare. There was a reason that brought me to where I'm at. So when I look out here and I see all of you, I think, what was in their path? What made you guys second guess or question or really want to dive into what went wrong with, your family's health, your kiddo and development, whatever. So that's pretty much what got me here today. And I want to take some time tonight, and I'm just going to share some memories that I have of the last, really all of my life. Some of them are from early. But what got me to where I'm at today, why I chose Western medicine, then a shift into Eastern medicine, because I think it's important that we know that there are options, because there's a lot of suppression of information going on nowadays. So I don't know, I just thought I would use tonight to tell my story and see if you guys could glean anything from it. I have a feeling that when you leave, you'll probably have more questions than answers. But it's kind of intentional, because asking questions is what got me to where I'm at. I keep asking questions. I'm not accepting that narrative. That doesn't sound right. That's weird. I'm suspicious about this. And I just want everyone to leave tonight knowing, you know what? It's okay that I want to question that. Because I think so many people feel like they're not okay to do that, but you are. It is okay to question the narratives in your life, in your kids' life, in your family's health. It's okay to ask questions. So, when I went to OT school, I was going through my rehab classes. I was learning about physical disabilities and developmental delays. And, when I actually started practicing as an OT, my first year I worked in adults, but the last 19 years has been in pediatrics. I was very sure I would not work in pediatrics. I do not want to work with snot-nosed kids. That's what I used to say. I love them. I love all their snot. I love everything about them. So the last 19 years in pediatrics is when I started realizing, all those diagnoses, hemiplegia and cerebral palsy, the things I learned about in school, that's not really the bulk of my caseload. My caseload has been more about behavior, speech delays, autism, attention and focus issues, engagement, body awareness, more sensory things, right? And not as much, there's motor component, of course. So it was, that was one of the first things that I noticed in my career. And so I'm going to share with you, I'll say I remember a lot, but I want to share with you some I remembers that got me to where I'm at. So I remember in my early years as an OT, I was working in South Austin at an outpatient clinic with kiddos, and the PTs, OTs, and speech therapists, we had been invited to go to a doctor who worked in South Austin. We had some of his kids on our caseload. He wanted to talk to us about some alternative treatments that he was doing with some of the kiddos that were on the spectrum. And so I remember I volunteered for some balance thing that they needed to do, but little did I know that volunteering would change the course of my life. When I went to do the thing, he said, well, we have to check your ears first. And I thought, oh, here we go. So of course they went to check of course I gave him the left ear. Is one ear good enough? No. And they had to check the right ear. Hey, you don't have an eardrum in your right ear. I'm like, yes, I know this. You're finding that out, but I know this. And so I had to reveal to my coworkers, I'm hearing impaired. I don't have a right eardrum. And the doctor started asking me questions about how that happened. And I said, well, when I was a kid, I was that kid who had chronic ear infections. I started getting the tubes, left, right. The left ear finally cleared up. The right ear never did. When I was 7, they cut my ear, laid it on my cheek. I went under surgery. They removed my mastoid and my tympanic membrane, my eardrum. And I thought, okay, I have to tell him all this. But he started prodding and asking me some questions. He said, where did you grow up when all this was going on? I told him the city, and he was like, that county is full of chemical plants. It was Brazoria County. Anyway, I said, yes. I said, yes, it is. I can tell you 5 plants within a 50-mile radius of my childhood home. He said, did you follow the CDC outlined, guide for vaccinations when you were a kid? I'm like, well, yes. What else would we have done? We didn't know. I don't remember the rest of his questions, but it was that line of questioning that when I left to go visit my parents back at home for a holiday, this was in my late 20s, I started asking my mom questions. I said, hey, when did I have my first earache? Remember when I started getting those tubes? She's like, oh, I remember you were 1. That's the late 70s, December 25th, 1978. She said, you were 1, and she said, you were so fussy, you were pulling at your ears, you couldn't quiet me down. It was Christmas Day, I still remember. I said, go get my vaccine card. This is the late 70s, by the way. And I said, let's just see if I'd had a vaccine. Sure enough, right after Thanksgiving, in November 1978, I had my MMR vaccine. And about 4 weeks later is when my mom remembers registering. My daughter is in pain and she's not happy right now. And it was that line of questioning from that doctor, from some random meet and greet, that set me off on a path where I started looking at things differently, even from my own health perspective. You know, I feel very honored and very privileged to have been in these kiddos' lives and these moms' lives. I'm very close with some of them. I have great relationships, and some have come and gone. But I think the hardest thing over all these years has been to hear mamas ask questions that they just want an answer to and have no way of getting an answer for. So when I was in elementary school, I remember when I was single, this is another I remember when I was single digits, maybe 8, 9, and I was sitting in class, 2nd or 3rd grade, and I remember thinking, I had this like internal conversation with myself, you're smart, why can't you focus right now? I was restless, fidgety, I couldn't stand still, my chair was always on 2 feet, and I was thinking, I can't concentrate. And then I remember telling myself, I still have this vivid memory. I remember telling myself, well, your hemline of your jeans has come up above your sock this far, and that strip of skin that's showing right there, it's got cool air on it. That's all I can think about. Literally, I remember having this conversation with myself, and I thought, you know what? I think I had sensory issues as a kid, and I couldn't sit still. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't focus. I mean, I'm very blessed and fortunate that I'm one of those kids who could get the problem one time and know it and move on. But I really had so much trouble concentrating in school, and I remember thinking that was sensory issues. I didn't know it at the time, and little did I know I would become an occupational therapist that works with kids with lots of sensory processing disorders later on. But this stuff was already occurring back in the day, and I was like, that happened to me. This was very eye-opening for me, and another part of my journey to get to where I'm at today. I remember having in my early years as an OT as well, a conversation with a mom. This was about 15 years ago. This is when all the conversation was about heavy metal in kids. This is when all the moms who had a child with an autism diagnosis, you know, they read the blogs and the parent, you know, comments, you know, what's going on? Hey, there's these tests you can get for heavy metals. I still remember sitting in a waiting room at a therapy clinic I was working at, and she was saying, you know, I've worked at a seafood restaurant for years, and they're saying that pregnant women can't eat fish anymore because of the mercury content. And I thought, okay, could it fit? And you could tell the mom was just struggling to figure out what went wrong with my daughter's development. What went sideways that we are not making the gains that we were before? What happened? And I remember clearly seeing just the pain in her of trying to figure out what is going on, you know, and that conversation was still burned in my mind because I have another memory. A few years after that, I learned about mercury being in vaccines. I learned about the word thimerosal. I was like, what is this? I dug deep. What is thimerosal? Why is there mercury in vaccines? I learned about analogous aluminum. I watched Suzanne Humphries. She's amazing. If no one knows who that is, I'm sad you don't, but she's a great doctor. She's in the Austin area. She's written some great books. Dissolving Illusions is one of them. But I remember I watched one of her seminars online one time. It was something pre-recorded from years back, or a few months or years back. And she talked about analogous aluminum. And I remember watching this clip of what a brain cell, maybe it's a dendrite, I can't quite remember, it's been a while. What happens to it when analogous aluminum interacts with it past the blood-brain barrier, and that thing recoiled as if it were in pain. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have so many kids on my caseload that have the autism diagnosis who have what they call brain cries, where they're in constant pain, they can't communicate, they're in their world, they can't come out of it because their body has just taken over their lives because of whatever is going on. And I remember that day thinking, you know, I sat with a mom years ago who was worried she ate too much fish because she ate at a seafood restaurant, but we're injecting those things that, you know, our digestive system can't eliminate the mercury in fish. Okay, But we're injecting those things, and they're inside vaccines. This was another part of the piece of the puzzle for me that really made me question even more. I allowed myself permission to ask more questions and move on from there and say, I need to know more about this and what's going on. I remember the first time I watched the movie Vaxxed. Has anybody seen that movie? Okay, good. I was like, I don't know who I'm talking to. So, but I actually did not watch it when it first came out. I knew I would be sad. I knew I would cry. I knew I would be angry. And I was like, where am I going to go with all this emotion? You know, so I wouldn't watch it for quite some time. Then they were like, hey, it's coming out with Vaxxed 2. I'm like, you need to go watch it now. You rented it, you paid for it, or I bought it or whatever. I finally watched it, and I remember thinking, how are all these clusters of kids being so harmed and so injured, and the world doesn't know about it? Why are our jaws not all on the ground screaming, and we can't tell the world about this? And this was my first insight into the fact that there's a lot of suppression going on with information. Who's in charge of that? We can give our guesses to, but we don't need to do that. I mean, it's just the fact that it's happening. It's the sadness of that, right? I remember thinking, when a seatbelt goes wrong in a car, and then they have a second person, recall, we have to recall this car, we don't want to endanger anyone. When a dresser is too high, they can be top heavy, I'll harm a child. One thing happens, recall. Why is that not happening with some of these vaccines? When I watched Vax, that was the next question that I allowed myself to ask. What is happening that this recall is not happening? Why is no one being held responsible for these mass injuries? I'll move on. I remember the first time I heard of the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. No thank you, President Reagan. That was when I was into the high wire with Del Bigtree. I started every Thursday at 11 o'clock. I'm like, I have to know, I need to know this knowledge. And I would be filling my mind with the high wire info. I felt so encouraged when I would watch how they were bringing lawsuits against Big Pharma. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I admire a lot, Del Bigtree. I was like, this is amazing. There are people out there that are fighting on injured children's mothers, parents, families' behalf, and they're trying to get the truth out there. I was so encouraged, and that was another piece of the puzzle for me to get to where I'm at today as well. I remember the day that I saw the magic of homeopathy. I was at a clinic, this was in Houston by this time. I was working at an outpatient clinic, and a nanny had brought in a kiddo. I'm friends with this mom, I have permission to tell his story at any time, she said. Because he's the reason why I'm with him. But I remember she walked in the nanny with him, and she said, you've got to see this. And this is a kid I've known since he was 2. He was now 4 and had not spoken one word, and that I can recall, or that was functional. Usually jibber jabberish, or just gabbing, but didn't really use it functionally in language. And I remember she had a little microphone in her hand, and she said a few words, and she gave it to him, and he said the exact words that she said, repeated them, echoed them, and I was like, what? And she was like, watch this, and she did a few things, and I was like, what is happening? What in the world is this all about? And so she was like, well, you got to talk to the mom, you got to talk to her, and he's on this new homeopathic protocol. I'm like, what is homeopathy? So that is what the first seed that was planted in me was, again, by a mom and a nanny. It was like, we had to get answers. We needed to know that this baby would talk someday. 4 years old, he'd never spoken one word, one coherent word, and now he's talking like crazy. And I was like, this is amazing. That was the day that a big shift in my thoughts about medicine occurred for me. I remember the first time when I was digging deep into homeopathy, I wanted to learn about it. Do I need to put myself through school? Am I going to become a homeopath? I thought about all the times when, as an OT, that I would just hit a wall with my kids doing therapy. I'm like, how do we get him to go to this? You only have so much in your repertoire, your toolkit, and I'm like, I felt like so many times I would hit a wall. And when I saw this kid just leap over the wall one day after being on a homeopathic protocol for 2 months, I really had to take the time and consider, okay, is this something I need to really dig into? So my memory I'll share is, I remember the day that I had been looking up homeopathy, but I wanted to learn about a particular remedy. And so I put this remedy in to a large monopoly conglomerate internet search engine. I'll call it that. And I remember thinking, okay, I put the remedy in there, and the first thing that came up was call poison control. Quackery, homeopathy, this. I was like, what? And it took me some more digging to ask questions. What? Is this quackery? Is this poison? To talk to people who are in tech. I am not in tech and I know nothing about it. I was like, what's a browser? Like, that's me. And so they're like, there are other browsers. There are other search engines. I remember the day that I had this search engine and this search engine, and I was like, the algorithm difference of what was brought up for me to read about homeopathy, the quackery that is homeopathy, I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a whole system of medicine. They have like hospitals in India that are like, do you want to do homeopathy today or do you want to have surgery? I mean, I've heard stories of people who grew up in India who were like, we'll try the homeopathy first and never had to have surgery. I'm like, what? Is this true? And I just realized the amount of suppression. It was really cemented in my mind that's going on with big tech, and I thought, okay, this isn't quackery. There's a reason why they're suppressing. I learned those reasons when I went to homeopathic school, and I was quite ticked. So not the best way I could put it, but there's a long history of this, and it's really saddening that more people don't know about Eastern medicine or alternative healthcare or systems of medicine that are so gentle and effective, like homeopathy. I'll share another memory, a couple of memories, and then one day at my OT clinic, I was walking by a counter and I saw a business card and it had been turned over, and I looked at it and I said, whoa, wait a minute. I backed up and I picked up the card and I took it with me. And I'm going to share with you guys what this card said. I was reading the back of it. The front was like for some clinic in Florida, but a mom who I'm actually good friends with now. I used to treat her son, her big guy, for OT a long time ago. But she's now an OT actually as well. But she had left that card there. I figured it out later on. I'm like, you left that card? She's like, yes. But this is what the card said. Sorry, I'm gonna take a drink. This is what the card said. Vaccine ingredients, : MSG, antifreeze, formaldehyde, aluminum, glycerin, lead, cadmium, sulfates, yeast proteins, antibiotics, acetone, neomycin, streptomycin, mercury, monkey kidney, dog kidney, chick embryo, chicken egg, duck egg, calf serum, aborted fetal tissue, pig blood, horse blood, sheep blood, rabbit brain, guinea pig, cow heart, animal viruses, insect cells, silkworm DNA, E. coli, etc., exclamation point. I don't know if I need to say anything else because that shaped me that day. I really thought, okay, people have been doing the work that I don't know how to do. This is good. I'm glad that this is getting out there, but is this really going on? And the truth is it is. It's unfortunate. I remember the day I read a book called Dirty Genes by Dr. Ben Lynch. It's a great book. I remember thinking, I think I might have that CONT, maybe another one. Sure enough, I did my DNA methylation profile. I have CONT SNPs. I know a lot of moms whose children are on the spectrum who have MTHFR SNPs. SNP is S&P, a single nucleotide polymorphism. That means it's epigenetics. It's how your DNA was treated as you lived your life being exposed to toxins in the food you've eaten. Is your DNA appropriately expressing itself, right? Those SNPs can occur, and they're linking these SNPs to problems in development, such as autism nowadays. And there needs to be a lot more done, or at least known about it. And so I'll end this part with that. That's a patchwork of memories that I'm sharing with you guys. There's so many more. I was thinking, oh, take that out, put that one in. I was thinking, what can I share with them? Last night when I was shoring this up. I definitely recommend that you guys watch the movie Vaxxed, if you haven't, or Vaxxed 2, either one, or both. But I'm going to talk just for a minute before I'm done about something called homeoprophylaxis. There's a movie, the producer is Scylla Whatcutt, and she has a movie on Vimeo called The Quest for Real Immunity. It is very well done. I know she put her heart, time, money, effort, and soul into it. I love that movie. On Vimeo, you can rent it for $9.99 or you can just purchase it for $20. I purchased it because I love to support things like that. The movie does a really good job of outlining what happens when your baby is developing and how their immune system forms. What role does mom's milk and mom play? It may sound boring, but it's really not, because the purpose of the movie is to highlight the fact that we so often want to depend on what the doctor gives us. I'm not knocking doctors, I'm just saying, to help our baby be more immune to whatever, when their immune systems were really created beautifully by God. They really were. And I feel like that movie does a really good job. I really recommend that any of you here would watch it. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about all these things have gotten me to where I decided to put myself through homeopathic school. I knew that there were things I could not do as a Western medicine practitioner. I could not get these kids to talk overnight. I could not do this. I couldn't change epigenetics. But I saw that homeopathy could. I started referring, when I was still just doing OT stuff, thinking about going to school, I started referring some of my other moms who were open, hey, go try this out, go see this homeopath. I remember a mom shared, she was like, hey, oh, okay. I remember a mom saying, hey, we've had him on a remedy for a week. I've got to tell you, this kiddo, he had an ADHD diagnosis. He no longer has that diagnosis. No, this was years ago. But I remember she said, every time my husband and I have talked, he's been so aloof and he cannot, because he's so stuck in his body, he can't pay attention. And she said, for the first time this week, we've only had him on a remedy for 1 week. And she said, my husband and I were talking, and let's say we said, oh, look how yellow the sky looks. And he said, no, it's not, it's blue. And they were like, it's the first time he was able to come out of his little world and not have to focus on his fidgeting and his restless little body because of a chronic inflammatory state, right? And it was the first time she's like, there's my son. He's able to communicate with us and come out of that body for just a minute and focus. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And when she told me, like, Stacy, the school's dropping the diagnosis, I was like, yes, this is amazing. I remember a kiddo who, used to elope from mom every summer that she took, as a single mom, her 2 boys out on vacation. I remember the year he started homeopathy, she's like, he didn't run this year. I was like, just those things are so important and just such great stories to tell. I knew that seeing all the vaccine injuries that I had seen in my whole career, I thought, I really want to see if there's an option for people who really do not want to do what the CDC has recommended. I learned, I don't even remember this memory or what date it was, but about homeoprophylaxis. So for those of you who don't know much about homeopathy, it's the use of God's good green earth, plant, mineral, and animal substances in a potentized and dilute form that it's nanoparticles. Basically, it's energetic medicine, it's nanomedicine, as one of my good homeopathic friends likes to say. That's it, nanomedicine. That's used to spark the body into healing things that are going wrong with itself. That's the best way to put it. It puts the shine on the body to fix it, not the drug itself. That's what I love, and I feel like it's the magic of homeopathy. And so there are plant, mineral, and animal remedies. An animal remedy could be an oyster shell or even, cuttlefish ink. But there are other animal remedies that we call sarcodes and nosodes. Sarcode is made from healthy tissue. A nosode is made from diseased tissue. Okay, so homeoprophylaxis is the use of homeopathic nosodes, which are made from diseased tissue, such as measles, mumps, rubella, polio. Okay, it's in a very, very, very dilute and potentized state. I like people have trouble sometimes wrapping their mind around homeopathy, like what, less is more? Yes, that is the case. So I like to tell it like this. If you have a little mason jar glass full of marbles to the top, to the brim, if you shook them, you would hear that clanging of those glass marbles against that glass, but not too much because they're packed tight in there because it's full, right? But what if you put one marble in there? The energy and the sound and the noise that you could make with that one marble, incredible, right? So think about this. If it's energetic medicine and we need some type of spark, energy to tell your body to fix itself, that's the best way that I can use to illustrate to people. Like, this is how dilute and potentized medicine works. The more dilute it is, the more potent it is. And so we use nosodes in certain potencies. We have a 50-month protocol. Well, I forgot, sorry. As a certified homeopath, I am a homeoprophylaxis supervisor through an organization called Free and Healthy Children International. If anybody wants any brochures from them, I have them outside. But Free and Healthy Children International, their website is freeandhealthychildren.org. They have great articles on there about homeopathy, homeoprophylaxis, the use of nosodes. This was founded in 2008 by the lady who made that movie, Quest for Real Immunity, and Kate Birch. And Kate Birch had spent some time in overseas observing other homeopaths using nosodes in childhood diseases with tremendously great results. And so she was like, okay, we need a protocol in the US because again, all this alternative stuff is so suppressed over here. So she formed Free and Healthy Children International. They have a 50-month protocol that walks kiddos. If you start at birth, you start the kiddo at 2 weeks of life and walks them through the homeopathic nosode form of those childhood diseases and exposes the body to an energetic, we'll call it a signature of those diseases so that the body can better encounter that pathogen in the future, right? So how do we encounter pathogens? Mucosal membranes, that's how we have to be susceptible. There has to be susceptibility first, right? And then we have to have some type of dip in our immune system to say, oh yeah, I'm probably gonna get the symptoms of this disease, right? And we encounter those pathogens through the mucous membrane. Well, it's through the mucous membranes that these nosodes are delivered. They're little tiny sugar pellets that the tincture is dropped on the outside of, the substance. And it's easy to administer, it's safe, gentle, no chemicals, no additives, no adjuvants, simply nosode remedies that are used. It's a 50-month protocol that they would complete and receive a certificate of completion for. This was the type of information that I was looking for all those moms who got kicked out of their doctor's practice, who said, hey, I vaxxed him and he has allergies out the wazoo and this and that and poop issues, but the rest of them I stopped. And they have none of the issues that he or she has. And I hear these stories all the time. So I remember thinking, there have got to be alternatives. So that's why I asked to come tonight, because I wanted to just tell my story about why I would be such a proponent of something like this, but it's the stories from the parents and the moms that have just been so desperate for answers. And could I have done something different? Should I do something different with the next one? Are there people who are contraindicated? And there are people who are contraindicated possibly for getting a vaccine. If you have a depressed immune system, if you have a chromosomal anomaly or your child, tendency toward inflammatory states, chronic inflammation. There are children that are born with CIRS, C-I-R-S, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I have one of those kiddos on my caseload. Mold issues. I mean, we live in Houston. There's flooding and flooded houses and black mold growing all over the place. Methylation and detox issues. Epigenetic SNPs, that goes back to the MTHFR, epigenetic single nucleotide polymorphism. These people have trouble correctly utilizing methylation pathways to detox the cell. I mean, they can't get rid of the adjuvant. So I have a lot of kids on my caseload who either were vaxxed with 4 vaxes that time, including a flu shot, whenever they finally had their regression and they were never the same again, or that the parent found out later, I had this SNP, this MTHFR, and he or she probably couldn't detox the adjuvants from that vaccine or those vaccines. Sometimes they group them together, right? People with philosophical or religious beliefs are probably contraindicated. Why should you be subjected to something that is grown on a medium such as aborted fetal tissue? Why? You're allowed to ask that question. If you have a history, if your child or your family has a history of poor responses, like to medical procedures or vaccines or whatever, most of the kids that I see have what's called chronic microglial activation. It's part of, we don't have to get into all that, but this subsequent progressive neuron degeneration can continue for years after the initial stimulus, long after the instigating toxicant or injury is gone. It's a state of neurotoxicity that just keeps repeating. So there are people and kids and families and moms and dads, there are people who should be contraindicated for vaccination. So I want to say thank you for letting me have some time tonight just to talk to you guys about some possibilities for alternatives. If anybody has questions or would like to talk to me afterward, I'll be outside eating my chicken salad sandwich. But thank you guys for letting me come and chat.
Thank you, Stacy, very much for sharing all those stories and helping us kind of get set up for our next speaker. So tonight, Jackie Schlegel is the Executive Director of Texans for Vaccine Choice. And Jackie had a serious issue in her family, so she wasn't able to come down from Austin. But she sent us a wonderful person. Regan De Marines is here, and she's going to, she is the Director of Legislative and Development, and she's going to share with us some of the current things happening in our Texas Legislature about vaccines, and we are just very happy to have someone from Texans for Vaccine Choice here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I'm not Jackie Schlegel, so hopefully I do this justice because I know many of you are probably excited to see her. My name is Regan De Marines, and I do work at Texans for Vaccine Choice. If you're a praying person, please keep Jackie and her mom in your prayers. She had an emergency this morning, and so hence I am here, but she needs lots of help to lift up her mother at this time. I'm curious why you're here. What brought you to this conversation tonight? Shout it out, let me know. What brought you tonight?
Vaccine mandate at my company.
Vaccine mandates at your company. Okay.
Vaccine mandates in college education.
College education mandates, okay. Anybody else?
Mandates, period.
Yeah. The food is good too, right? Okay, I do, yes, we deal with vaccine mandate questions. We can't keep up with the casework. I do live in Austin. Don't feel bad for me. There are a few conservatives still left there. I'm rounding them all up. But I do live really close to the Capitol, which is helpful because I'm there a lot. And we keep calling special session after special session. And one day it will end, hopefully soon. But in the meantime, I want to tell you a little bit about our organization. Is most of the crowd familiar with TFVC? Yes? No? Okay. All right, new people, I love it. Okay, so we started in 2015. So we've been around for a while, grinding out protection for medical freedom here in the state of Texas. Jackie Schlegel is our executive director, and she is the founder of TFVC. She has 3 children. Her first one is 20 years old and is a profound special needs child. She cannot live on her own. She has to have 24-hour care. She has 2 other children, 18, and Gracie is 15. They were all vaccinated. Her first one was vaccinated, and at her, I believe it was her 3-month appointment, had 8 vaccines, and she never recovered. Her other 2, her doctor convinced her to continue to vaccinate, but on a slowed down schedule, and she believed the doctor and kept going. They have a lot of digestive issues and things that they struggle with, but for the most part are, functioning adolescents. So in 2015, a bill was filed by a legislator that would have taken away all exemptions in the state of Texas. And Jackie had her kids in public school and thought, uh-oh, what am I gonna do? My kids need to go to school. Who's gonna do something about this? Someone needs to step up. And she said, oh, no one's stepping up. She started a Facebook group and thought, come on, Mom, let's somebody take charge here. And nobody would. And she said, it's me. God has called me to be the person. And so she started Texans for Vaccine Choice. She marched down to the Capitol. She did not know who her representative was. She didn't know how to look it up. She knew nothing about politics. But she was a passionate mom, and she knew that if that bill passed, we were going to be in trouble. And so she gathered a couple other friends. They started making some friends at the Capitol, and they were able to defeat the bill that would have removed our exemptions, as well as 13 other bills that would have infringed on parental rights. And that's a big deal. So TFVC started. It grew on Facebook before they censor us like crazy these days. She was able to gain a lot of membership all over the state, starting to get recognized. People in the Capitol knew who she was. She's feisty. She's just a really great storyteller. And so she continued the path of forming a political action committee, becoming a nonprofit, becoming all official, and here we are today still fighting. And then the little thing called COVID happened, and we went from 10,000 members to 100,000 members in 18 months. And it's been incredibly hard to keep up with the growth. When I first started with TFEC in 2019, I was a volunteer. I used to be super quiet about my choices in vaccines. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Just turned my exemption in and thought, gosh, I hope they don't ask me any questions because I don't want to talk about it. And in 2019, in the 86th legislative session, I knew nothing about politics, never thought I'd work in politics. I used to coach volleyball, had nothing to do. I mean, there were politics in that, but a different kind of politics. And Jackie was posting, I need some moms to show up at the Capitol. Austin is a really lonely place. Nobody wants to come out and help me. I need some people to come. And I thought, oh, I'm homeschooling my daughter now. It's gonna be great. We'll take her down there. And I fell in love. I'm like, this is amazing, so fun, fast pace. I'm not sure anything's happening in this building, but I'm gonna keep coming. And we worked very hard in the 86th legislative session. It was not a friendly year. COVID wasn't there. People didn't want to talk about vaccines. We had to kind of whisper. When we would walk into offices, they'd be like, uh-oh, here's the vaccine people. And they would shove an intern in front of us and run into their offices. Seriously, it was nuts. But our group grew and grew and grew. And I started attracting moms because I got brave to talk about what was going on. And they just came from everywhere. California, New York, down the street. I found all kinds of new friends in Texas or in Austin, right? Where it's not really friendly to talk about choice unless it's on another issue. But we were able to develop a huge group in Austin and make big waves. And I found it's the best education for your kid to take them down to the Capitol and teach them how to talk to people, what the process goes on. And I'll say now my daughter thinks she wants to be a politician, which is really scary to me, but we need good ones. So here I am, still here. I haven't gone away. And in January, Jackie called me and asked me if I wanted a real gig. So sure, why not? Life worked out. My husband was able to leave his job and become an entrepreneur. We homeschool, we have flexibility. And I was like, okay, I'll just work through the legislative session and then I'm done. Life's gonna go back to normal. Well, here I still am. Because of our exponential growth, I will be transitioning over to Director of Development, which, nonprofit work, you kind of have your hands in all the things to make it run. And our team is growing quite a bit. We do have member care coordinators that are volunteers all over the state to help us bridge the gap between what we do at the Capitol into our local communities. So I will tell you about that later and how we can get you connected with people that are here in Houston. Okay, is anybody following the legislative session? Yeah, you haven't given up yet? So our third special session started on Monday. We did a canvas. We had about 70 TFEC members and some that had never been to the Capitol show up on Monday. We sat in the House gallery. We showed our support for medical freedom and to try to stop the mandates, let them know that there are people that care about this. And then we hit up every single office and educated every office in that building. And I saw people just bloom with bravery and excitement to be able to talk to their representatives. So that was Monday. We have about 30 bills that we're tracking now that all deal with vaccines. So there's a lot of them. I don't have them all committed to memory yet, so if you're gonna drill me on that, let's talk after. Okay, mandates are coming out of everywhere. Because we are a Republican state still, we are a red state, conservative, many of our lawmakers are very hesitant to regulate business. Now you're gonna say, oh, we did that all through COVID. Yes, we did. But the sentiment that we're getting is that it's a tricky discussion and situation what's going on. The governor has kind of said with his EO, just enough to keep us at bay. Yes, we're, it's always going to be voluntary, never mandatory here in the state of Texas, but we can't seem to get it in writing yet. We did have 2 amazing victories. And if you guys really like to geek out about legislative stuff, I do have a summary here. So this session was very successful for us. It may not feel like that because many of us are still suffering. We're about to lose our jobs, the coercion, the bribery. It's nuts what's going on. But we had 2 bills that were signed by the governor. And if you've ever tried to get a bill passed through the whole process, it's really hard. And there's lots of places where it can be struck down. So the first bill that we got passed this session was HB 2536. It is actually not a direct vaccine bill, but it is a bill that helps with parental rights. And if you take your child to an ER and you ask for a second opinion, you ask to transfer care, you cannot use those 2 or your vaccine status as a trigger to open a CPS case. You're like, well, that sounds, why? That's common sense, right? It's happening a lot. CPS has really swung to one side of the pendulum, and we're trying to bring it back to a more neutral stance. There was a case called the Drake-Pardo case that happened a few years ago. Many of you might have followed it. We had many lawmakers that were involved in that case. And so this was a big bill for us because we have a lot of medically fragile families, lots of them. And we want to try to protect those people. If you've ever heard of Munchausen by proxy, it's where they label the mom. She's trying to get attention for herself by creating issues within her child. It's a real thing, but the percentage is very small of this actually being what's going on. And it's child abuse. We have laws around that, but we felt we needed to really tighten up the ability for moms to ask for a second, third, or 10th opinion, because if you have something wrong with your child, you're gonna go to the ends of the earth to figure out what's wrong with them. So we're really proud of that work. We actually had to take our name off of a lot of the materials that we took around because one side of the aisle doesn't really like us. And so we were able to pass that bill unanimously in both the House and the Senate. So that was a big deal. The other bill that we got passed was SB 968, and that is the ban on vaccine passports. It was a really big deal. It was an interesting process of how that one worked. It was something like a 30-page bill, and it has a lot of things in that about emergency powers and kind of reining it back in. And then there's a little bitty section about vaccine passports. And when that got to the governor's desk, the vaccine passport was the thing that he cheered about and got everybody fired up. So it was really kind of nice to see him recognize that fact. We have, since that bill has been passed, we have been turning in businesses who do not want to comply. So if you find one, please feel free to send them to me. We're happy to turn them in. If they serve alcohol, we can turn them into the TABC. You can do it yourself. And there's other ways that we can help them be more compliant. So now, the one bill that got killed at the very end was HB 4272. And that would have protected employees from all of the mandates that are going on now, except for healthcare workers. In the state of Texas, our health code and our healthcare workers operate under a different section of code than just normal employment laws. So it's even trickier to address the healthcare situation, and I know that that's a really tough one. And we're seeing many nurses, all kinds of medical professionals that are walking away from their jobs. They're being voluntarily fired, basically, because of all of this. And the issue continues on. The shortages, all this stuff that the news media is telling us is going on is partly because, or mainly because of the nurses, doctors who are just saying, no, I'm not going to take this. So the work ahead of us, it's an uphill battle. I'll be really honest with you. We are working very hard with the governor's office to impress him and to encourage him to open up the call. The current call that he has on for Special Session 3 only addresses government workers right now. And it asks, are mandates legal for government workers? And if so, are exemptions available? And what kind of exemptions? Adult mandates have never been seen. Y'all, we've worked with the school system, right? We have all 3 exemptions here in the state of Texas. We've dealt with kids issues in public school and daycares who take public money and all this stuff. We've never seen an adult mandate. So there is no precedence. There is no law that says, that exemptions are required for adults, that businesses need to take them. I mean, it's a deep, deep, complicated issue. But we are working very hard behind the scenes with his office as continuing to work with all of the other offices to get them to be brave. Many of them are starting to file bills. We've had conservatives that will say, oh, I'm always on your side. I'm gonna vote with you. And we're like, now it's time to be in public, because they're realizing now they are gonna be affected by a vaccine mandate. It could be them. And so they're like, what are we gonna do about this? And we're like, but you have all the power. You're the legislator. You're the one who makes the laws and the rules and all the things, so get on it. Like, let's get this done. But we have some new champions that have stepped up and have filed some bills. So if anybody has any questions about those, I'm happy to answer to the best of my knowledge. I do have a lot of materials outside. I have a flyer on employee exemptions and some tips on how to go about it. The childhood schedule, I would tell you, COVID has given people permission to ask questions. And I think Stacy brought up a good point about feeling brave to ask those questions. They never would have thought about it. We have so many people that have come to us and said, I have vaccinated myself, my kids are vaccinated, I take that flu shot every year, but I'm not getting this one. And then they start asking questions about the whole childhood schedule. And they're blown away when they see the difference from the 60s to now. They now get 72 vaccines before they're 18. Yeah, it's a lot. And so we wonder why we have all these issues. Keep asking questions. Keep sharing this information with other people. You guys are welcome to take as many brochures as you want out there. They are, I have one on vaccines and then one specifically on COVID. So, share them. I like to slide them in diaper boxes at Target or, be sneaky and where you leave them. Yeah, you gotta outsmart the other side, right? So, Costco, that's a good place too. So I know it's complicated. Many of you might have questions, so I wanted to leave some time for questions and answers, and I'll hang around for a little bit afterwards. I do have to go back to Austin tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have them right now. Yes.
So on the 4272, what's the call to action? Who needs to hear what? What is the cycle of the legislative process?
I believe it is, because the call is so narrow right now, and many of the offices that we spoke to on Monday just don't feel that even if they were to get a bill through committee, that will be called a point of order on the floor. So a point of order can be called if it's outside and not germane to the topic. It can be a point of order if they forget a comma or something like a grammatical error, anything like that. So it's a very they have to be strategic and calculated in how they get that through. Senator Bob Hall has filed a bill, and he's a great champion for us. If y'all have a moment to send Senator Hall a thank you note, he has gone to bat for us like you wouldn't believe. He filed a bill, SB 1669. I don't know if any of you guys followed that hubbub. We had 6 hours of on the record vaccine education, and the other side didn't know what to do with themselves. It was fantastic. I sat there for a long time that day, but it was worth it to hear everybody's story and everybody to have an opportunity. The bill didn't go anywhere, but it started the discussion. So sometimes we think, oh, the bill didn't get passed, we weren't able to do that. It's a step. Like, it's a process, and so next session, when that bill comes up, we know the rebuttals, we know how to tackle it. Like I said, we have about 30 bills that are related to vaccines. There's a couple mask bills in there. Many of them are pretty broad. I think Senator Paxton's bill is really good. She has a bill that discusses
what's the name?
adult exemptions.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's easier.
So not everybody's super excited about that, about having an adult exemption, but it would stop the bleeding for a bit. And I mean, she kind of has insider information as the AG's wife, but I feel it's a really strong bill, and I think that it has some possibilities. If we can get a little bit more space in that call language, we can drive that through. There have been some bad bills, and we'll be publishing this on our website so you guys can follow the good, the bad, and what we're watching. Yes, ma'am.
Not really so much a question, but a call to action.
I'll just get this
Saw
one.
at the hospital in New York, delivering babies because the nurses walked out. Firefighters, police officers are walking out. If the folks that work for United, the guys that are working for these airlines, walk away. They can't make money without their employees to fly the airplanes, to steward the airplanes, to deliver the babies, to work in the hospital. You're not alone. Stand up and walk away. And this will stop.
Agreed, and I think it's not just the vaccines, but like the school issue. Like, get your kids out of public school. I know that it's not a popular topic, and not everybody can do that. I totally understand that, but if you have the means to do that, get them out. Save them now. And then get involved. Become a precinct chair. Help somebody's campaign. Y'all, campaign season is gonna be nuts. It's gonna be so exciting. We have several Republican seats that are gonna be up for the House. Redistricting is looking interesting. We're gonna gain some ground. I really believe it. Get involved with these people. Learn about their children. You know, what makes them tick, so that when legislative session comes around in 2023, you have that intel, you have that relationship already developed, because during session, these guys are crazy. They don't have a lot of time. They're very businesslike, but if you can get them in district, if you can get to know them before they become the rep, you're gonna have a much better chance of them listening to what you have to say and what your issues are. We know both candidates very well, and Chad Prater is also running. You know, we will not endorse anybody. It is politics, and you have to be calculated. Yeah, I personally, I think cuff fines has helped a lot, and now and Wes, they have both come out with strong statements for medical freedom. But I know Abbott is very powerful, and he's a smart guy. He's a former AG and has worked within the Supreme Court. So every word he uses, there's reason and it's calculated. And to be honest, Biden's stuff is atrocious, but it's helping our movement. It sounds crazy, but I'm like, oh, keep talking. Yeah, you keep putting those mandates down. But it has fired up 27 governors to say not in my state. Yeah, so we're waiting for the action, but it's coming. So it's really getting people fired up. Yes?
Okay, so speaking of governors and the 27 states says not in my state, what happens when your company is from not one of those states? Yeah, very blue. And they're mandating, despite the fact that we don't even go into offices. For 18 months, we've been working from home. Do we have any kind of recourse?
So corporate headquarters is in California. We have an office in Houston that houses, 3,000 people? And we're still being mandated consistent, where Governor
So the SB 968 addressed private businesses that give you services. It did not touch employee protections. So if this business was to require a vaccine passport to come into the door, that would be illegal. The private business can do whatever they want here in the state of Texas.
It's a publicly traded law.
Right, it's a publicly traded company, but the way it's, so that's for financial means, but the way it's classified in legal terms, it's a private enterprise. So like, whatever, if it's a tech company or whatever that's still a private business, it's operating as a private
So
business.
you're saying that we have no whatsoever?
Does your, I know,
Here.
is your job, does the company offer any exemptions?
We've all filed for them, but we haven't been approved yet.
Yes.
Okay,
Here's the thing, they're being super vague, being giving everything close to the vest as you would expect. So today was the employees around the US, the deadline to
Submit a request.
submit your accommodation. You can check either, medical or religious. And then the reply is, someone will get back to you in early October with what the next steps are. ... Yeah. Very.
do they have a written policy on what what their COVID stance is and what their exemptions are? Do they have anything written like in the handbook or somewhere in HR floating around? Are they still developing it as we're talking? A lot of them are.
Yeah, right. Communicated by email their policy, but it's in handbook, I'm not aware of that. Right, so what they're talking about right now in terms of a COVID policy is present day. So although 98% of us are still working from home, there's a few that still need to go in the office, and they have a protocol around that, which is even if you're vaccinated, wear a mask. You need to be tested 2 to 3 times before you come into the office. So that's present day. But with this accommodation, they're like, yeah, there's a 4-page Q&A doc, and the rest is, we'll get back to you in October.
As they
And they're not
consult
even,
legal.
and they're not even,
As they consult their legal team, can we even do this? Is this right? Do you have anybody in HR that you trust or that you're connected with? Do you know how many employees are willing to file an exemption? You don't.
see, we're all very quiet in, because we don't want to put targets on our back.
Did you file a religious exemption?
Yes.
Good. We definitely recommend filing a religious exemption. It's a much better route to go. I'm seeing medical exemptions be denied. Someone in HR thinks that they know more than a person's medical doctor, which is mind-boggling to me, but it's happening. The religious belief, if you have a deeply held religious belief, and those are the words you need to use, keep it very short, very brief. You do not need a pastor or any religious figure to sign that. You are the person that says what your religious belief is, and religion is very broad. It's a very broad term here in Texas. So stick with the religious belief. Right now, that's the best thing. I know we don't have, unfortunately, ironclad, like this is how you do it, because literally everybody's situation is a little bit different. And there's days y'all have to walk away from all of it because it's heavy. It's heavy. People calling with their, vaccine injury stories constantly, and they're losing their jobs, and they're crying on the phone, and you're like, I can't. I'm like, I don't like people being taken advantage of, and I'm seeing it down in the valley like you wouldn't believe. And I want to help everybody. And unfortunately, we don't have like a playbook to hand you and be like, this is what's going to work, because we're living through what's going to work. Stay strong, lots of prayer. I know that doesn't completely solve the problem, but stay strong and don't take the vaccine. Great question. It's almost like I paid you to say that. Okay. So I have several member care coordinators that are here in Houston. One is up near Woodlands Conroe area, and she is so fired up. She's hosting groups of mamas, and it's growing. Awesome, it's perfect. You can bring them along with you. But I can get you connected with her, and so I'll give you my card. If you'll just send me an email, and then I'll connect you with all the Houston people that are helping us out. Yeah, sure.
Really good. So I can't promise it'll work, I think get very styled, but, I would personally recommend her, if someone's looking for religious extension help, on how to write it, what verbiage to use, I would recommend looking at her stuff. I think it would be worth the $30 to pay to, I don't know, because I've heard people saying online that they use her protocol, her husband's a pastor, and, it has helped people, get their religious.
Peggy Hall, and
It's with the Healthy American.
Healthy American. We do have some language as well. If you send me an email, I can send you a couple samples, and you can use some of that verbiage. But we really encourage you to tailor it to your situation and your deeply held personal belief. Yeah. That's a good question, and I need to get a legal opinion on that. I'm not a lawyer. So the question is, you don't directly work with the government, but you're like a contractor, you work with a lot of, okay. Okay, so the governor has said in an EO that state government workers cannot be mandated to take the vaccine. Now, in like public schools, so anybody that takes public funding also has to take an exemption. So I think it would be a good question. If you'll send me an email, I can ask a couple lawyers what they think would stand up in court and try to help you that way. It's probably the next step for you.
It seems very much that the governor and the legislature is reacting to what's happening now. But I don't see that we are anticipating what is going to happen. So I think we all know that there are booster shots coming, one after the other, to jam into our arms. And every time that happens, we're going to be back in the governor's office begging for help. We need to impress upon him that we are trying to prevent a future catastrophe in the state of Texas. We need to get this done now. What can we do?
You can always call your reps, your senator, your state rep. You can always call the governor's office. We have done many action alerts in the past, and I'm anticipating that we will have one coming. None of the bills have been referred to committee yet. I think because of the governor's call is so tight. I will tell you this, I was in the governor's office a couple weeks ago meeting with somebody who I would say has some influence there. He used to be a litigator for medical malpractice. Did not know that vaccines manufacturers have no liability. Didn't know that. So this is what we're working with. We all have to step up and educate. I mean, that's a fact. Like, we're not crazy anti-vaxxers. We're not, conspiracy theory. Like, that's the law. And very, very powerful people do not understand that. So the more we can all step outside of our comfort zone and talk to everybody we know about this, Hang with us. I think we're gonna have an action alert coming soon. So make sure you're on our email list because we send those out to our members. We put them on social media, but we are being suppressed like you wouldn't believe. And so then when that action alert comes out, it's generally write to your reps, call them. We give you very specific language. We give you the telephone number if it's a particular committee group that we need you to call. And the calls work. They hate it. They always ask us, are you guys gonna do an action alert on us? And we're like, yeah, buddy, we're coming. And they're like, great, because the phone just rings, because you guys make a difference. When you step up and help us with the action alerts, it's awesome. They're like, stop the calls, please. So, it's good.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you, what's the best way? You can write your senators, you can write your governor, but what's the best way to get rid of them? Is it by fax, by phone, by email, all three?
All three. And they are supposed to log every single conversation that comes in, and they tally those up, and then they let the representative know, X amount of people called about this, and this is how they believe. And if you're a constituent, tell them that. You hold more weight because you get them into office. The more people you can encourage to do that, the better.
Letters are very good.
Letters are very good. Please try to stay away. I know it's easy to copy and paste and send it to all 181 of them, but try to pick the ones that are really influential and write them a personal note. If they get a handwritten note, I've been told by staffers, they take handwritten notes to the rep's desk. So it's worth the time and the effort, especially if you have beautiful penmanship, to write a little note and try to get that in there. Come to Austin. I know nobody wants to go there these days, but I'll happily take you around the Capitol. I'll show you the ropes, I'll show you how things work, and I can direct you to the offices that you want to see. So that's always an option too, if you have time availability to come.
One last thing, we were talking about the people power earlier, and the power of your voice. This vaccine issue is the crux of the issue, but the tipping point of the reality is because they have no liability. If you can focus on the problem is the vaccine, the mandate. The solution is returning liability to the manufacturer, and they will stop this madness because they will not be able to financially be solvent if you can come back and report all the damage that they're doing. So when you're writing, when you're calling, when you're talking, when you're standing in front of them, your solution is to repeal that 1986 legislation and return liability to the manufacturers the same way it is for car seats, formula, diapers, everything else on the market. I can take your corporation down to the studs, except for something that wants to kill me, harm me. You take my DNA and prevent my next generation from being able to fulfill their God-given destiny. Remember that when you're talking. Please. Thank you.
And always be kind. Seriously, you can be passionate. That was amazing. I'm taking you to the Capitol with me. Seriously, be nice because they do get some nasty people in there, and we always say that we're the friendly, calm, reasonable voice of vaccine choice, and we have really made huge headway. Though we thought they were going to come for all of our exemptions. They're using the same playbook out of California, they're doing in New York, and they're starting to branch out to other states. We're ready, but COVID has stopped them. It doesn't feel like we're winning, but we are chipping away at what's going on because more and more people are having their eyes open to what is in a vaccine, to what it's done, and they're starting to realize, uh-oh, my children are damaged. And it may be too late to save those children, they may be too far down the path of damage, but we're making a difference. We are getting more and more people. Our organization started out, it was all vaccine-injured families. It was. They were physically, emotionally, spiritually spent because they have done everything to try to save their child. And the tide has turned. Jackie says to me all the time, all you moms that, you knew beforehand or you did a delayed schedule, wow, you're coming out of everywhere. And I'm like, there's a lot of us. There are more than they realize. And the more we band together and we stay strong and say it's not coming near my body and we draw the line in the sand, we are going to win. Watch the High Wire, watch the VAX and the other documentaries that Stacy talked about. call me if you're feeling hopeless. I can usually pep people up and get them, that was the coach in me, right? I can get you back up and going. Try to find somebody that is a buddy of yours that when you're feeling down or just hopeless, that you two can talk each other back and be strong in your conviction, because the tide is turning. But just have faith, pray to God. He is great and will bring us through this.
Do you have a president that takes the colleges? And they are really blasting out vaccines. Get vaccinated, we have all these sweet states, and you can get a 3-year college.
Only for the unvaccinated, right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a member care coordinator in College Station, although my husband would be like fine if we moved back there and like took that over because he's an Aggie. But honestly, our staff, there are 2 of us that are full-time. I'm actually not even full-time myself, but I work those hours because I'm so committed to this movement. So if you have connections, I don't know if your child goes there or whatever, another organization has talked to me about the college level, what we can do, if we can set up a meeting or something like that. So take my card and let's discuss it and see if we can figure something out. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just from a different perspective, and I'm gonna say like how important outreach is also, like how we all need to be talking to other people and there's something like, is there people taking up farmers markets or colleges or, because as someone who just moved here 2 months ago from California, it was horrible. Came to Texas for the freedom, the red state, vaccine choice. And I have 2 kids who are fully vaccinated and 2 kids without any, so I really have seen like both ends of the spectrum. I've also seen what just happened with our governor's election in California and Utah. And I feel like people in Texas, and I was also saying so glad to be here, but people are so like Abbott. Abbott is amazing, but like what happens if Abbott gets out? And people have been coming from Texas with our, electoral colleges or anything else, like people want to stay back. And if they are able to cheat elsewhere, they will be here, or, I don't know, however people feel about that, but if he's gone eventually, then what? So like, we really need the numbers, and we're so divided right now on everything, it's like, I see it on my Facebook all the time, it's like, well, you might agree with me on this area, but like, you don't share the same religion as me, or like, whatever, and it's like, we need to put all that aside and come together, on this one issue that's so important to impact all of us, so,
Yeah, I think the medical refugees are so fired up. I think us Texans have gotten a little complacent because we've sat back and said, oh, well, we've always been conservative. Yeah, it's Texas, whatever. And we can't.
It'll change fast,
Yes.
we lost our personal belief in our religious, and then it went right after our medical, not qualified, my kids had a medical insurance and they lost it, so I see how quickly they baby step until all of a sudden you're like, ooh, I was so uncomfortable and I didn't want to talk about this stuff, and makes me uncomfortable, and then it's just the rug is swept out from under you, like, crap, I probably should have been more involved, so that's why we're here, but, I hope Texas does not protect us, because I see how easily it can happen, anywhere.
But see, now you have to say you're a Texan now.
Yeah, I know.
Don't worry, she votes red. Don't jump her in the parking lot. But isn't it a crazy world where BLM is pissed about the vaccine mandate card or the passport or whatever in New York? I was like, is this the Babylon Bee? Very confused. This is real news. Okay, well, any other yes, no.
Well, from my understanding,
They do have exemptions, but it's not on the childhood schedule. And in the state of Texas, secondary education is in a different, like they have a different procedure. So I think that, like, even though we have laws and stuff, people are pushing the limits these days on what they're allowed to do. It's just not listed on anything, so it's kind of gray area, and they're taking full liberties to just lay down the mandate.
There's an issue with when my son's freshman years ago, when he took the vaccine or whatever, meningitis, whatever they require. So that's one issue, and they didn't question it at all. The other issue, I thought state agencies do not require vaccines, the COVID vaccine or all.
So that's also like the question of a contractor or working like third party kind of tricky question, that we would need some legal, and a lot of lawyers are very hesitant to be the first one to go to court with this because there's just no precedence, they're concerned, and they're like, we cannot lose. We can't have a case and it go the wrong way. So I know there's a lawyer out of Ohio that's being really active. The Highwire works with a great firm, but they're just not here in Texas. I've talked to a few lawyers, and getting the right plaintiff and enough plaintiffs to be able to affect change is a little tricky because people kind of get a little nervous. And we prepare them, we're like, listen, they're gonna come after you. They're gonna probably try to burn your house down and like, bury you if you go forth with this lawsuit. And a lot of people don't want to go down that path. They don't want to be the one that steps out there to start with, but we need some.
To this gentleman over here that was actually quite passionate, and I agree with him, and I think I don't have experience with being particularly of the right etiquette in dealing with the legislators, but I'll say this. I appreciate you being here from California. Texas, in my view, if we don't have a governor that will do something like that, I believe it's HB 4272, and have legislation that gives medical freedom to all employees across the board. Anything less than that in the governor's office, in my opinion, is a vote for Allen West or somebody else, and the governor needs to hear that, he needs to hear it from all of us in a nice, respectful way.
You know how you do that? You talk to their primary push them further to the right.
Because I'm not an advocate, and I think he's too far to the left. But maybe that's a representation of me being so far to the right. I want someone that's actually going to be actionable. And I've actually met Allen West, and I've been in a room with him, and he's all about action. Action, action, action. And right now, there's a lot of legislators talking, but we're not seeing bills passed enough. And I know your team can't do that, but the citizenry can make phone calls. And they can demand that the governor actually put something like that, this vaccine freedom across the board, maybe less than apply to hospitals. But short of that.
And what's interesting about 4272 is it was an industry bill. It was a reporting bill that the industry files every single year. And Senator Colcourse, at the last minute, put that employee protection language on there. And she said, if you want that, you have to take this. And 2 Democrats killed it. We watched it happen on the floor. It was maybe 3 days left of session. And Jackie and I were like, I can't believe this is gonna happen.
This special session's gonna die. The only one that can call another one is Governor Abbott. So he's the one that needs to hear.
So use your voice. It does matter. I know it doesn't always feel like it, but it does. The staffers are very young, but they are supposed to keep track of all of that stuff. So I hope I've inspired you to do something, at least a little more educated in this, and to continue to speak to your friends and coworkers and strangers on the street, everybody you can find. My card is outside. I have some more with me if they're out. Please take the materials. Thank you so much for hanging in. I appreciate all of y'all being here.
I just want to remind everybody, if you picked up one of the orange agendas, we do have the websites for both Texans for Vaccine Choice and for Stacy Cook. And then I also put some articles and podcasts and different things for If you're looking to make a religious exemption to prevent having to take the vaccine, there's some information that you can look at. And anyway, I even put the phone numbers for some of the senators and House representatives and people like that to contact. So thank y'all for coming, and make sure you've got a orange paper so you can take home this stuff and share with your friends. Thank y'all for coming along this visit. Bye.